The lawyer leaned across the table in courtroom 4B and said the words I had been dreading for weeks. If they push the best interest of the child angle, we might lose. His voice was low, careful, like he was delivering a diagnosis no one wanted to hear. The fluorescent lights above us had been dimmed per Ethan's accommodation request, but the room still felt too bright, too cold, too full of people who wanted to take my son away from me. Across the aisle sat my parents, Richard and Diane Prescott, dressed like they were attending a charity gala. My sister Victoria sat beside them, checking her phone every few minutes, not a single hair out of place. Their lawyer, Harrison Burke, shuffled papers with the confidence of a man who had never lost. I looked at Ethan beside me. 17 years old now, tall and thin, his noise-canceling headphones resting around his neck like armor. He didn't fidget, didn't panic. His gray-blue eyes moved across the room, cataloging exits, light sources, the distance between our table and theirs. Then he leaned close to my ear and whispered 5 words that made no sense at all. Just let them talk. I wanted to grab him by the shoulders and ask what he meant. Let them talk? These people had thrown us away 11 years ago. They had slammed doors in our faces, ignored our calls, sent lawyers instead of birthday cards. And now they wanted control of his money, his future, his life. But Ethan just looked at me with that steady gaze, the one he got when he saw patterns other people missed. He nodded once, slow and certain, like he knew something I did not. My throat tightened. I turned back to Daniel, our lawyer, and tried to focus on his strategy notes. But my mind kept drifting backward, 11 years backward, to the night everything shattered. The Prescott family home in Lake Oswego sat on a hill overlooking the water, all polished wood and expensive silence. I was 29 years old that October evening, sitting on my parents' leather couch with Ethan beside me. He was 6 then, small for his age, rocking slightly the way he did when the air felt wrong. His fingers traced patterns on his knee, counting something only he could see. 2 weeks earlier, we had gotten the diagnosis. Autism spectrum disorder. I was still learning what those words meant. My parents had called a family meeting, said it was important. My sister Victoria was there with her husband Bradley, both of them perched on the love seat like guests at someone else's funeral. My mother stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, refusing to meet my eyes. My father sat in his leather chair, the one no one else was allowed to use, studying his hands like they held the answers to questions no one had asked. Something was wrong. I could feel it in the way the room held its breath. Victoria spoke first. She always did. "Julia, we need to talk about Ethan." Her voice was rehearsed, careful, the same tone she used when firing employees at her marketing firm. "My children are scared of him. He screams. He does not look at anyone. Last week he had a meltdown at Mom's birthday dinner and Madison cried for an hour. I felt Ethan's rocking increase beside me. He could hear every word. He always heard everything, even when people assumed he was not listening. I tried to keep my voice steady. "He is 6 years old, Victoria. He just got diagnosed. He is learning. We are all learning." Victoria shook her head, that pitying look on her face that I had seen 1,000 times growing up. "He is not normal, Julia, and I cannot have my kids around that. Around that, not around him, around that. Like my son was a thing, a problem, a mess to be cleaned up." I turned to my mother, waiting for her to defend us, to say something, anything. Instead, Diane Prescott looked at me with eyes I did not recognize and said, "Sweetheart, we have discussed this. We think it is best if you and Ethan find your own space." The words hit me like a physical blow. Find our own space. This was my home. These were my parents. I looked at my father, the man who taught me to ride a bike, who walked me down the aisle at my first wedding, who used to call me his little fighter. Dad? He did not look up. His silence filled the room like smoke, suffocating everything it touched. That silence told me more than any words could. They had already decided, all of them. This meeting was not a discussion. It was an eviction. I stood up so fast the coffee table rattled. He is your grandson. He is 6 years old and he just found out his brain works differently and you are throwing him out? Victoria's voice turned sharp. Do not be dramatic. We are not throwing anyone out. We are just saying maybe some distance would be healthy. For everyone. Distance. They meant exile. They meant disappearing. They meant pretending we never existed. My mother stepped forward, arms still crossed, chin lifted. Julia, we have made our decision. You can stay. But Ethan is too much for this family to handle. Too much. My son was too much. I looked at Ethan. He had stopped rocking. His eyes were fixed on the window, watching rain streak down the glass, his fingers frozen mid-pattern on his knee. He had heard everything. He understood more than they gave him credit for. He always did. I grabbed his jacket from the back of the couch. Then I guess we are both leaving. My mother's voice followed me toward the door. Julia, do not be rash. I spun around. Rash! You just told me to choose between my son and my family. There is no choice. There was never a choice. Victoria called after me as I helped Ethan with his jacket. You are making a mistake. You cannot handle him alone. I did not answer. I could not. If I opened my mouth again, I would scream, and I did not want Ethan to hear me scream. I wanted him to see me walk, to see me choose him without hesitation, without regret, without looking back. The rain had turned into a downpour by the time we reached my car. A used Honda with a dent in the bumper and a check engine light that had been on for 6 months. I strapped Ethan into his car seat, my hands shaking so badly I could barely work the buckle. Through the rain-streaked window, I saw my father appear in the doorway. For one desperate moment, I thought he was coming to stop us, to apologize, to be the father I remembered. He watched me pull out of the driveway. He did not wave. He did not follow. He just stood there until I turned the corner, and then he went back inside and closed the door. I drove through Portland that night with no destination, no plan, no money, no family. Just away. Just anywhere that was not there. Ethan was silent in the back seat, more silent than usual. I kept checking the rearview mirror, making sure he was okay, making sure he was still there. We stopped at a red light on Macadam Avenue. Rain drummed on the roof. My hands would not stop shaking on the steering wheel. Then, from the back seat, a small voice. Mommy? I turned around so fast my seatbelt cut into my shoulder. He had not called me that in weeks. The doctors said speech might be difficult for a while, that I should not push, that I should wait. But there he was, looking at me with those gray-blue eyes, really looking, which he rarely did. They do not want me, do they? My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. No, baby, they do not. I reached back, took his small hand in mine. But I do. I want you, and I am never going to stop. Ethan nodded once, the same way he would nod 17 years later in a courtroom. Then he turned back to the window and watched the rain. I drove through Portland that night with nothing but my son's hand in mine. I had no idea that 11 years later I would be sitting in a courtroom, and that same little boy would hold all the cards. I had no idea he had been preparing for this moment since he was 8 years old. I had no idea that the family who threw us away would come crawling back when he built something worth $3.7 million. And I had no idea that his whispered words, just let them talk, would be the key to everything. But that night, all I knew was this. I had my son. He had me, and I was never, ever letting go. I woke up on an air mattress in a 600-square-foot apartment on Division Street, staring at a water stain on the ceiling shaped like a question mark. I had memorized every curve of that stain over the past 2 weeks, tracing it with my eyes during the hours I could not sleep. Ethan was already awake, sitting by the window in the pale morning light, counting cars as they passed below. 1, 2, 3, 4. His voice was barely a whisper, the only time he spoke without being prompted. I lay there listening to him count, wondering how I was supposed to do this, how I was supposed to raise a child alone when I could barely keep myself together. The apartment was small and old and falling apart in ways I discovered daily. The kitchen faucet dripped, the heater rattled like it was angry about something. The neighbor's television bled through the walls at all hours, laugh tracks from sitcoms I never watched. But it was ours. No one could ask us to leave. No one could look at Ethan and call him too much and tell us to find somewhere else. I had given him the bedroom and set up my air mattress in the living room, which meant I slept next to the drafty window and woke up cold every morning. It did not matter. He needed routine. He needed his own space. I could survive a little cold. Every morning I did the math. The numbers I could not escape. My savings account held $4,200. First month's rent and deposit had eaten $1,800. Ethan's therapy, the kind insurance refused to cover, cost $300 per session. I did the calculations over and over, hoping the numbers would change, knowing they would not. We had maybe 2 months before everything collapsed. I checked my phone every morning, still hoping. Still waiting for a message from my mother, my father, even Victoria. An apology, a change of heart, something. Instead, I found reminders from the bank about credit card payments and silence from everyone who was supposed to love us. I deleted the notifications and got Ethan ready for school. My job at Eastside Community Health Center started at 7 in the morning. I worked as a medical billing specialist, which meant I spent 8 hours staring at insurance codes and claim denials and payment disputes, translating human suffering into numbers that companies used to decide who deserved help and who did not. The pay was modest, but the benefits covered Ethan, at least partially. I had requested the early shift specifically so I could pick him up from school at 3, which meant waking at 5:30, getting him dressed in the same blue shirt and gray pants he could tolerate, dropping him at the early morning program by 6:45, and then racing across town to clock in on time. The routine became a blur. Wake, dress Ethan, drive, work, drive, pick up Ethan, therapy twice a week, dinner, always the same safe foods he would eat, bath, bed, lie awake staring at the question mark on the ceiling. Repeat. I drank coffee like it was oxygen. I ate lunch at my desk, usually something cold I had brought from home, barely tasting it. I learned to function on 3 or 4 hours of sleep because Ethan woke up at night, sometimes screaming, sometimes just standing in the doorway staring at nothing, and I never knew which version I would get. My coworkers whispered when I walked past. I caught fragments of their conversations, pieces that were clearly about me. I heard her family cut her off. Something wrong with her kid. She looks like she has not slept in weeks. I pretended not to hear. I ate lunch alone in my car, watching rain streak down the windshield, too tired to feel anything but numb. Learning Ethan's world became my second job. He did not speak in sentences. He spoke in patterns, numbers, colors, sequences that made sense only to him. I learned to decode his language. The way blue, blue, blue meant the lights were too bright and he needed them dimmed. The way he covered his ears when a sound was too much. The way he rocked when he was trying to regulate himself, to hold himself together in a world that was constantly too loud and too bright and too unpredictable. I started keeping a notebook. Page 1 listed sounds Ethan could handle, things like rain on the window, white noise from a fan, my humming. Page 2 listed sounds that triggered meltdowns, things like vacuum cleaners, hand dryers in public bathrooms, sudden laughter from strangers. Page 3 listed safe foods, plain pasta, apple slices, exactly 7 goldfish crackers, never more, never less. I became a scientist studying my own son, documenting every detail, searching for patterns that would help him survive. The meltdowns came without warning. A car horn outside, a tag on his shirt I forgot to cut off, the wrong spoon at dinner. Ethan would scream, not from anger but from overwhelm, his nervous system flooded with input it could not process. I learned to hold him, to rock with him, to whisper the same phrase over and over. I am here. You are safe. We will get through this. Sometimes it took 5 minutes, sometimes it took an hour. Sometimes I ended up crying too, holding my son on the kitchen floor, both of us shaking. One night Ethan melted down over the bathroom light. Too bright, he kept saying. Too bright, too bright, too bright. I remembered something I had read on a forum at 2 in the morning, a tip from another parent who understood. I grabbed a blue pillowcase from the closet and draped it over the light fixture. The harsh white softened to a gentle blue glow. Ethan stopped crying. He looked at the light, then at me, and said one word. Better. I made it to my air mattress before I started sobbing. One word. One small victory. It felt like I had climbed a mountain. 3 weeks into our new life, Margaret Chen sat down across from me in the break room. She was 58 years old, with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun and reading glasses on a beaded chain around her neck. She had worked at the clinic for 22 years. Everyone called her the heart of Eastside. I barely knew her. I barely knew anyone. I kept my head down and did my work and tried not to fall apart in public. She looked at me with eyes that saw too much and said, "You look like you have not slept in a month." I almost laughed. Is it that obvious? Honey, I have raised 3 kids and buried a husband. I know exhausted when I see it. I do not know why I started talking. Maybe because she was the first person in weeks who had spoken to me like a human being instead of a subject for gossip. I told her everything. Ethan, the diagnosis, my family, the apartment with the dripping faucet, the insurance denials and the therapy bills, and the nights I lay awake wondering if I was enough. Margaret listened without interrupting, without judging, without offering empty reassurances. When I finished, she reached into her bag and pulled out a folder, worn and soft from handling. Inside were photocopied pages, resources for parents of children on the spectrum, support groups, sliding scale therapists, respite care options, emergency assistance programs. I stared at the folder. Why do you have this? My grandson is autistic, she said, diagnosed at 4. He is 19 now, in community college, one of the happiest kids you will ever meet. She covered my hand with hers. Family is not always blood, honey. Sometimes it is whoever shows up when everyone else leaves. I could not speak. I just nodded, clutching that folder like a lifeline, because that is exactly what it was. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, I sat on my air mattress with my laptop open. I was researching IEP procedures, trying to understand the school's plans for Ethan, when an email notification popped up. The sender made my heart stop. Diane Prescott, Mom. I stared at it for a full minute before clicking. Maybe they had changed their minds. Maybe they were sorry. Maybe they wanted us back. The subject line read, "Moving forward." The message was 3 sentences long. Julia, please do not contact us anymore. Victoria needs peace, and your presence and Ethan's disrupts that. We wish you well, but we need to protect our family's stability. It was signed Mom and Dad. Protect our family's stability. As if Ethan and I were not family. As if we were a disease they needed to quarantine. I read it 3 times, waiting to feel something. Anger, grief, despair. Instead, I felt something harden inside me, a wall going up brick by brick. I closed the laptop without responding. There was nothing left to say. The next afternoon, my phone rang at work. The school's number. My stomach dropped the way it always did when that number appeared. Mrs. Prescott? This is Principal Hendricks at Woodstock Elementary. We need you to come in. Is Ethan okay? Is he hurt? He is not hurt. But he has not eaten lunch in 5 days. He sits in the corner of the classroom facing the wall. He will not speak to teachers. He will not participate. Frankly, Mrs. Prescott, we are not sure we are equipped to handle his needs. I heard what she was not saying. They wanted him out. Another door closing, another place that did not want my son. I told my supervisor I had to leave and grabbed my keys. Margaret caught my arm on the way out. Do you need me to come? I shook my head. I did not know what I needed. I just knew my son was sitting alone in a classroom, facing a wall, and the people who were supposed to help him were ready to give up after 6 weeks. I drove to that school with my hands shaking on the wheel. But this time, it was not fear making me shake. It was something else. Something harder. I thought about my mother's email. Protect our family's stability. Fine. If my family would not protect Ethan, I would do it myself. I would fight every school, every insurance company, every system that tried to push him aside. I would learn their rules and beat them at their own game. I had no money, No support, no idea what I was doing. But I had Margaret's folder, I had my notebook full of patterns, and I had a son who needed someone to stand between him and a world that kept trying to throw him away. I was going to be that someone, whatever it took, however long it took. I was going to figure this out, or break trying. I walked into Woodstock Elementary School with Margaret's folder clutched against my chest like a shield. The hallway smelled like floor wax and cafeteria pizza, and the walls were covered with construction paper turkeys because November had arrived without my noticing. Ethan had been at this school for 6 weeks. It felt like 6 years. Principal Hendricks waited for me in her office, a woman in her mid-50s with glasses on a chain, and a voice designed to sound concerned while saying terrible things. The school counselor sat beside her, pen ready, taking notes on whatever was about to happen to my son. They used phrases like, not a good fit and limited resources, and perhaps a more specialized environment. I had heard those phrases before. They meant they wanted Ethan gone. I opened Margaret's folder and pulled out a page I had highlighted the night before, a printout about IEP rights under federal law. My son is entitled to a free appropriate public education, I said, keeping my voice steady even though my hands were shaking under the table. That is not a request. That is the law. Principal Hendricks blinked. The counselor stopped writing. I continued before they could interrupt. I want an IEP meeting scheduled within 30 days. I want a behavioral assessment conducted by a qualified specialist, and I want a written plan for his accommodations that addresses his sensory needs. The room went quiet. Principal Hendricks cleared her throat. Mrs. Prescott, we were not suggesting that Ethan should leave. Yes, you were, I said. Now let us talk about what you are going to do instead. I walked out of that meeting with a scheduled IEP evaluation and a promise of accommodations in writing. My hands did not stop shaking until I got to my car. But I had won something. The first battle in a war I was only beginning to understand. 2 weeks later, I found Dr. Nina Reyes. I had called every name in Margaret's folder, working through the list during lunch breaks and after Ethan fell asleep. Most therapists had 6-month wait lists. Most did not accept our insurance. Most were not taking new patients. Dr. Reyes called me back the same day I left a message. I had a cancellation, she said. Can you come Thursday? Her office was in a small Victorian house on Alberta Street, converted into therapy spaces filled with soft lighting and weighted blankets on every chair. No fluorescent bulbs. Fidget toys arranged by color on a low shelf. It was the first space I had ever seen that seemed designed for someone like Ethan. Dr. Reyes was in her early 40s with dark hair streaked silver and warm brown eyes that never rushed. She spoke slowly, calmly, with no sudden movements. During Ethan's first session, she sat on the floor at his level instead of towering over him in a chair. She did not force eye contact. She did not demand words. She just watched him organize her colored blocks, first by size, then by shade, then by some pattern only he understood. He did not speak, but he hummed 3 notes repeated over and over. Doctor. Reyes hummed back. The same 3 notes. Ethan looked at her. Actually looked, his eyes meeting hers for just a moment before sliding away. I held my breath. After the session, Dr. Reyes turned to me with an expression I did not recognize at first. It took me a moment to realize it was hope. Your son is not broken, she said. He is not missing anything. His brain just processes the world differently, and that difference has gifts most people cannot see yet. I felt something crack open in my chest. No one had ever said Ethan had gifts. Not my parents, not the school, not any of the doctors who handed me pamphlets about managing expectations and preparing for limitations. Dr. Reyes saw something else entirely. And for the first time since the diagnosis, I let myself believe she might be right. I became a student of my son's world. Every night after he fell asleep, I stayed up researching, reading library books about autism and sensory processing, scrolling through online forums where other parents shared strategies at 2 a.m. I learned vocabulary that had meant nothing to me months before. Stimming, proprioceptive input, executive function, masking. I learned that Ethan's rocking was not a problem to be fixed, but a tool he used to regulate his nervous system. I learned that his rigid routines were not stubbornness, but survival, his way of creating predictability in a world that felt chaotic and overwhelming. The IEP meeting came and went. I sat across from school administrators and specialists with my notebook full of research and my folder full of documentation. I requested specific accommodations based on what I had learned: noise-canceling headphones, movement breaks every 30 minutes, a visual schedule he could check throughout the day. They pushed back. I pushed harder. Document everything, Dr. Reyes had told me. So I did. Every email, every meeting, every time they said no, and every time I made them say yes instead. At home, I built systems. A visual schedule on the refrigerator with picture cards showing each part of the day, the same breakfast every morning because routine reduced anxiety, warnings before every transition, 5 minutes until bath time, 2 minutes until we leave for school. Ethan began to trust the patterns. One evening, without prompting, he pointed to the picture card for bedtime, then walked to his room and lay down. I stood in the hallway with my hand over my mouth. 6 months ago, bedtime had taken 2 hours of screaming and tears. Tonight it took a picture card and 30 seconds. I cried myself to sleep that night, but for the first time, they were not tears of exhaustion. They were tears of hope. In December, 4 months after we left Lake Oswego, I found an envelope in our mailbox with no return address. The handwriting was loopy and childish, unfamiliar. Inside was a hand-drawn card on construction paper. Crayon figures, one tall and one small, holding hands beneath a wobbly yellow sun. The message inside was written in careful letters. Dear Ethan, I miss you. Love, Lily, Victoria's daughter, 8 years old. She must have sent this secretly without her parents knowing. The missing return address was intentional, a child's attempt at hiding her tracks. I sat on the stairs holding that card for a long time. Victoria had taught her children that Ethan was dangerous, someone to avoid, but Lily remembered him as someone worth missing. I put the card in my nightstand drawer. I did not tell Ethan. I could not explain why we were not allowed to write back. The following week, I drove to Lake Oswego for a specific brand of pasta, the only kind Ethan would eat. I knew it was risky. This was my family's territory, but Ethan had not eaten in 2 days, and desperation made me brave. I was reaching for the blue box in aisle 7 when I saw her. Victoria, 10 feet away, her cart full of organic produce and expensive wine. Our eyes met. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. For one moment I thought she might speak to me, say something, acknowledge that I existed, that Ethan existed, that we had once been family. Instead, Victoria turned away, deliberately, completely. She pushed her cart in the opposite direction without a word, disappearing around the corner like I was a stranger she had never met. Not anger, not confrontation, just erasure. I stood frozen in that aisle, holding the pasta box, watching my sister's back disappear. She had not even flinched. Ethan was changing, slowly, quietly, in ways I noticed only because I watched him so carefully. At 7 years old, he still did not speak much, but he observed everything. He sat by the window for hours, tracking patterns I could not see. Which neighbor left at what time? Which cars passed in which order? Blue car, 7:15, he would murmur. Red truck, 7:22. Mail truck, 9:41. I bought him a notebook, and he filled it with observations, not words but symbols, numbers, sequences. I did not understand most of it, but Dr. Reyes told me not to interrupt. He is making sense of the world the only way he knows how, she said. Support it. Do not fight it. One night I flipped through his notebook while he slept, page after page of patterns and codes and systems. On the last page, something different. A list of names: Grandma, Grandpa, Aunt Vicky, Lily. Next to each name, a single word. Gone, except next to one name. Mommy. Stayed. I closed the notebook with shaking hands. He understood more than I had ever realized. He had been watching, categorizing, making sense of who had abandoned him and who had not. He was 6 years old, and he already knew the difference between people who left and people who stayed. At the end of the month, I opened an envelope from Dr. Reyes's practice. Insurance had denied the claim again. Amount due, $2,400. Past due invoices from previous months added another $1,800. I checked my bank account. $812. Rent was due in 5 days, $950. The numbers swam in front of my eyes. I had been so careful, so frugal, and it still was not enough. My phone buzzed. A text from my landlord. Reminder, rent due Friday. I set down the phone and looked at Ethan's closed door. I could hear him humming in his sleep, those 3 notes he always hummed, the ones Dr. Reyes had hummed back to him. I had no money, no family, no backup plan. But I had that door, and the boy behind it. Tomorrow I would figure something out. Apply for assistance programs. Ask about payment plans. Sell something, anything. I would not give up. I could not give up. Ethan had written it in his notebook. Mommy stayed. I was going to make sure that word never changed. 2 years after we left Lake Oswego, my body finally broke. I woke up one winter morning and could not get out of bed. My throat felt like sandpaper. My skin burned with fever. My bones ached like someone had replaced them with lead. I lay there staring at the ceiling, at that question mark water stain I knew so well, and realized I could not move. For 2 years I had run on caffeine and desperation, working double shifts to cover therapy bills, staying up past midnight to research and plan and fight. I had lost 15 pounds, not from any diet but from forgetting to eat. And now my body was demanding payment for all the rest I had denied it. From the kitchen I heard Ethan counting. 7, he said. 777. His cereal. He always counted 7 pieces before he would eat. The routine continued whether I was there or not. I forced myself upright, my head spinning, the room tilting around me. I could not afford to be sick. There was no one else, no family to call, no backup plan. If I did not work, we did not eat. If I did not take Ethan to school, his routine would shatter and the meltdowns would follow. I dragged myself to the bathroom mirror and looked at the woman staring back. Dark circles carved into pale skin, cracked lips, eyes that had forgotten what rest looked like. I was 31 years old and I looked 45. I cannot do this anymore, I thought. Then I heard Ethan's voice from the kitchen. 7. Always 7. I splashed water on my face and got dressed. I made it to work that day. Margaret took one look at me and said I looked like death warmed over. I told her I felt worse. She handed me cold medicine and watched me swallow it with coffee that had been sitting too long. I processed insurance claims with trembling fingers, the numbers blurring on the screen, the fluorescent lights drilling into my skull. Just get through the day, I told myself. Just get through one more day. At 2 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. The school's number. That familiar dread flooded my stomach, the same feeling I got every time that number appeared. Mrs. Prescott? This is Principal Hendricks. There has been an incident. We need you to come immediately. My mouth went dry. Is Ethan okay? Is he hurt? He is not hurt. The principal paused. But he hurt someone else. The words made no sense. Ethan did not hurt people. Ethan avoided people. He flinched when strangers got too close. He had never once raised a hand against anyone. Something was very wrong. I grabbed my keys and told my supervisor I had to leave. Margaret caught my arm on the way out. Do you need me to come? I shook my head, even though I did not know what I needed. I just knew my gentle, pattern-obsessed son had supposedly hurt another child, and nothing about that fit the boy I knew. The principal's office smelled like old coffee and disappointment. Ethan sat in a corner chair with his knees pulled to his chest, rocking hard, his noise-canceling headphones missing from around his neck. His eyes were squeezed shut. Across from Principal Hendricks sat a woman I did not recognize, pressing a tissue to her nose, glaring at my son like he was a monster. "Mrs. Prescott," the principal said. Ethan struck another student during lunch. He broke the boy's nose. I looked at Ethan. His hands were shaking. His whole body was shaking. "That is not possible," I said. "Ethan does not hit people." "The evidence suggests otherwise," Principal Hendricks replied. "Marcus Wheeler required medical attention." I knelt beside Ethan, keeping my voice soft. "Buddy, can you tell me what happened?" He rocked faster. Then, in fragments that took everything he had to produce, the words came. Too loud. They took them. Would not give them back. I turned to the principal. "Who took what?" Silence. Then the other mother shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Principal Hendricks cleared her throat. There was an altercation over headphones. My blood went cold. Someone took his headphones? Marcus was curious about them, the principal said. He wanted to try them on. And when Ethan tried to get them back? Marcus and his friends played keep away. It was just a game. A game. They had stolen my son's only protection against sensory overload. They had taunted him, kept his headphones out of reach, watched him spiral into panic. And when Ethan, overwhelmed and desperate, tried to defend himself, he became the problem. I stood up slowly. My fever was gone, replaced by something hotter. Let me understand this. Multiple students stole my son's medical accommodation. They taunted him. They refused to return his property. And when he reacted to their harassment, you are punishing him? Principal Hendricks held up her hands. "Mrs. Prescott, violence is never acceptable." "Neither is theft," I said. "Neither is bullying a disabled child." "Where is the suspension for Marcus Wheeler?" The other mother spoke up, tissue still pressed to her nose. "My son was just playing. Your son is the one with problems." I turned to her slowly. "My son has autism. Your son has parents who taught him it is funny to torment people who are different. Which one is the real problem?" Her face went red. "How dare you?" I ignored her and looked at Principal Hendricks. "I want documentation. I want a written report of what those boys did. I want Ethan's IEP reviewed to include anti-bullying protections. And I want a formal apology." The other mother stood up. "Apologize? For what? Your son broke my son's nose." "Your son broke my son's sense of safety," I said. "I would say we are not even close to even." I turned back to the principal. "My son is not a problem to be removed. He is a child to be protected. If this school cannot do that, I will find one that can, and I will make sure every parent in this district knows why." The room went silent. I reached for Ethan's hand. "Come on, buddy. We are going home." That evening, after Ethan had eaten his safe dinner and retreated to his room, someone knocked on our door. I opened it to find Margaret standing in the hallway, holding a casserole dish in one hand and an envelope in the other. "I figured you had not eaten," she said. "And do not argue. I made too much anyway." She pushed past me into the kitchen before I could protest. We ate in silence. I did not realize how hungry I was until I started, and then I could not stop. Margaret watched me with knowing eyes, but said nothing until I set down my fork. Then she slid the envelope across the table. "Eat first," she had said. "Then open it." I opened it. Inside was a check. $3,000. "Margaret, I cannot accept this. It is not charity," she said. "It is a loan. Pay me back when you can, or pay it forward someday. Either way, I do not want to hear arguments." I stared at the check. $3,000 would not solve everything, but it would keep the lights on, keep therapy going, buy us time to breathe. "Why?" I whispered. "Why do you care?" Margaret shrugged like it was nothing, like she had not just thrown me a lifeline. "Because someone did it for me once, and because that boy in there deserves a fighting chance." That night, I could not sleep. The fever had returned, pounding behind my eyes. I got up for water and stopped outside Ethan's door. Light glowed from underneath. He should have been asleep hours ago. I opened the door quietly and found him sitting on the floor, surrounded by papers. He had drawn the room, every piece of furniture mapped to scale. But it was more than that. Small suns marked the window where morning light came in. Wavy lines near the heater indicated sound. X marks near the door showed where people might appear unexpectedly. "Buddy, what is this?" He did not look up. "Safe places. Not safe places." "Why?" "So I know before it happens." My heart cracked open. My 9-year-old son was engineering his own survival system, mapping every sensory input, every potential threat, every variable in his environment. Because the world was too unpredictable, too hostile, too overwhelming. So he was building a way to navigate it. Dr. Reyes's words echoed in my mind. His brain has gifts most people cannot see yet. I was looking at one of them. A week later, a thick envelope arrived from Morrison & Associates, the law firm my parents had used for decades. I knew what it was before I opened it. Legal language, formal tone. "We hereby notify you that Richard and Diane Prescott have amended their estate documents. You have been removed as beneficiary. This decision is final. Please do not contact our clients regarding this matter." I read it twice. Then I walked to the kitchen, held the letter over the stove burner, and watched it catch fire. The paper curled and blackened. I dropped the ashes in the sink. Ethan appeared in the doorway. "What was that?" "Nothing important," I said. He tilted his head, that look he got when he knew someone was not telling the whole truth. But he did not push. I washed the ashes down the drain and watched them disappear. My parents had officially erased me from their future. They had cut me out like a tumor, like something diseased that needed to be removed. Fine, I would build my own future. I looked at Ethan, still standing in the doorway with his maps of safe places and not safe places rolled up in his hands. We did not need their inheritance. We did not need their approval. We did not need anything from people who had looked at a 6-year-old boy and decided he was too much trouble to love. I had my son. He had me. And together, we were going to prove every single one of them wrong. Saturday mornings belonged to the library. I discovered this ritual by accident when Ethan was 8, during a disastrous trip to a crowded mall that ended with a meltdown so severe I ducked into the nearest quiet building just to escape. The Multnomah County Library, Central Branch, high ceilings, whisper quiet. The moment we walked through those doors, Ethan went still. Not frozen, not overwhelmed, peaceful. Like he had finally found a place where the world made sense. After that, Saturday mornings became sacred. We drove downtown every week, found our usual spot near the technology section, and stayed until noon. Ethan did not read fiction. He read manuals, technical guides, system documentation, books about how things worked. I brought my own book and sat nearby, letting him explore. When Ethan was 12, I noticed a flyer on the library bulletin board. Free coding club for teens, Saturdays at 2 in the afternoon. I almost walked past it. Ethan had never shown interest in group activities. He avoided other children whenever possible. But something made me stop, take a photo, show it to him later. He studied the flyer for exactly 12 seconds. "Can I go?" 3 words. Unprompted, expressing something he wanted. I tried not to show how significant this was. "Of course, buddy, we will check it out next week." He nodded once and returned to his book about network architecture. But I saw something in his eyes I had not seen in years. Anticipation. The coding club met in a basement room of the library. 8 kids ranging from 12 to 16 sat at long tables with laptops provided by the program. The instructor was Harold, a retired software engineer in his 70s, who volunteered his Saturdays to teach kids who reminded him of himself. Ethan sat in the back corner, as far from everyone else as possible. He did not speak to the other students. He barely looked at them. But when Harold started teaching Python basics on the projected screen, something changed. Ethan went motionless, but not the frozen stillness of overload. This was focus. Pure, absolute concentration. His eyes tracked every line of code like he was watching something miraculous unfold. After the first session, Harold caught me waiting outside the door. "Your son," he said. "How long has he been coding?" I blinked. He has not. This was his first time. Harold stared at me like I had told him the sky was green. That is not possible. He just wrote a sorting algorithm. From scratch. In an hour. I did not know what a sorting algorithm was, but I recognized that look on Harold's face, the same look Dr. Reyes had given me years ago when she watched Ethan organize blocks. The look that said there was more here than anyone had realized. That night, Ethan asked me a question. Can I have a computer? A real one? I thought about the bills, the budget, the endless calculations that ruled our lives. Let me see what I can do. He nodded. Then he said something that lodged in my chest and stayed there. Code makes sense. People do not. But code always does what you tell it. I understood. In a world of unpredictable humans who said one thing and meant another, code was the first language that never lied to him. Christmas that year was quiet, just the two of us in our small apartment. Ethan could not handle traditional holiday chaos, the bright lights and loud music and overwhelming stimulation. So we kept things simple. A small tree with soft white lights, his safe foods for dinner, one gift each. I had saved my holiday bonus for months, $420. I spent $318 on a refurbished laptop from a tech recycling center. Old ThinkPad, scratched case, slow processor. But it worked. I wrapped it in newspaper because he preferred that to shiny paper. He unwrapped it methodically, corner by corner, the way he did everything. When he saw what it was, he did not smile. He rarely did. But he ran his fingers over the keyboard like it was something precious. "Thank you," he said. Then he opened it, booted it up, and did not look away for 6 hours. By New Year, Ethan had taught himself HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. He coded until I made him stop, and sometimes I found him at 3 a.m, laptop glow illuminating his face while the rest of the world slept. One night I found him still awake at 2:30. "Buddy, you need sleep." "Almost done," he said. "Done with what?" He turned the screen toward me. A simple website, just text on a basic layout. But the header made my breath catch. Places that are too loud. A map. He was building something. I did not know what it would become. I just knew my son had found a language that finally made the world make sense. When Ethan was 13, I needed a file from my old laptop. Tax documents, insurance records, the endless paperwork of survival. The laptop was ancient, barely functional, but it held years of documentation I could not lose. I opened the Documents folder and saw something unexpected, a subfolder I had not created. Family Archive. I clicked. The folder opened to reveal hundreds of files, organized by date, screenshots of emails, saved text messages, voicemail transcriptions, every communication from my parents and sister over the past 8 years, cataloged and preserved. I scrolled through in disbelief. The email from my mother saying, "Please do not contact us anymore." A screenshot of a text from Victoria I had forgotten. "You made your choice. Live with it." My father's one-word reply when I had begged for help with Ethan's surgery. No. A voicemail from Diane I had never listened to, transcribed in careful detail. "We are updating our will. You should know you are not included. 8 years of rejection, 8 years of cruelty, documented, time-stamped, preserved." I called Ethan into the room. "Did you save all of this?" He looked at the screen, nodded. "Why?" He considered the question the way he considered everything, carefully and thoroughly. Patterns reveal truth over time. People forget what they said. Data does not. I felt a chill run down my spine. "You have been documenting them for 8 years?" 11, he said. "I started saving things before I understood why. I just knew something was wrong. Patterns told me to keep records." He was 6 years old when we left. He had been watching, recording, remembering since the very beginning. "I am not angry," he added quietly. "I just wanted proof, in case anyone ever asked what really happened." At 14, Ethan caught the attention of someone who would change everything. Marcus Webb was 45 years old, the founder of a small accessibility tech startup called OpenPath. He visited the library coding club looking for young talent, neurodivergent kids with potential who might benefit from mentorship and resources. Harold pointed him toward Ethan. Marcus approached carefully, sitting nearby without crowding, looking at Ethan's screen without demanding attention. "That is interesting," he said. "What does it do?" Ethan did not make eye contact, but he did not retreat either. It maps sensory data, noise levels, light intensity, crowd density. "Where does the data come from?" "I collect it, manually, for now." Marcus asked technical questions, the kind that showed he actually understood what Ethan was building. Ethan answered more in those 10 minutes than I had heard him speak to a stranger in years. Before Marcus left, he asked one final question. "Why are you building this?" Ethan paused, looked at his hands. "Because I wish I had it. When I walk into a room, I do not know if it is safe. I have to guess. If I guess wrong, everything falls apart." Marcus nodded slowly. "What if you did not have to guess?" Ethan looked up then, rare direct eye contact. "That is what I am trying to build." Marcus handed me his card. "I would like to mentor him," he said, "if you are open to it." 2 weeks later, I was reviewing Marcus's mentorship proposal when my phone buzzed. Instagram notification. I barely used social media, but the name caught my eye. Lily V. 2007. Lily, Victoria's daughter, now 16 years old. I had not heard from her since the postcard stopped 5 years ago. The message was short. "Aunt Julia, I know we have not talked in forever. I need to tell you something important. About Grandma and Grandpa. Can we talk?" My heart pounded. 8 years of silence, and now this, I typed back. "Lily, is everything okay?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then her reply came through. "They have been watching you, both of you. More than you know. I found something I think you should see." Watching us. My stomach turned. How? Why? I stared at the screen, thinking about Ethan's folder full of evidence, 11 years of documentation. He had been watching them. Apparently, they had been watching right back. I typed quickly, "When can we talk?" Lily's response came immediately. "Tomorrow, but do not tell anyone. Especially not Mom." I set down the phone and walked to Ethan's door. He was at his computer, headphones on, lost in his work. On his screen, the early prototype of his sensory mapping app glowed with possibility. He was building a tool to navigate hostile environments. He did not know it yet, but he was going to need it. We both were. The family that had thrown us away was still watching, still waiting. And now, finally, the walls were starting to crack. I waited until Ethan left for his Saturday coding session with Marcus before I opened the laptop for my call with Lily. My hands were shaking as I sat at the kitchen table, heart pounding in my chest. The video call connected, and there she was. Victoria's daughter, now 16 years old, looking over her shoulder nervously. She was sitting in a car, parked somewhere private, and even through the grainy connection I could see dark circles under her eyes. The 8-year-old who had sent crayon postcards had become a young woman carrying a weight too heavy for her age. "I do not have much time," she said, her voice hushed and fast. "Mom thinks I am at volleyball practice." "Lily, what is going on? Grandma and Grandpa have been tracking you, both of you, for years." My blood went cold. "What do you mean tracking? Social media alerts, Google notifications set up for your names. Every article about Ethan's coding achievements, they have read it." "They have a folder, Aunt Julia. A whole folder of printouts about everything he has done." I felt the room tilt around me. They had cut us off completely, refused contact, sent lawyers to remove me from their will, and the whole time they had been watching. "Why?" I managed to ask. "They threw us away. They made it clear they wanted nothing to do with us." Lily hesitated, glancing at her rearview mirror. "Because they are waiting." "Waiting for what?" "I do not know exactly. But I heard Grandpa tell Mom last month. He said if that boy ever amounts to anything, we need to be ready to act." My hands gripped the edge of the table. "Act how?" Lily's eyes darted nervously. I have to go. But Aunt Julia, whatever Ethan is building, they know about it. And they are paying attention. The call ended. I sat in the silence of my kitchen, trying to process what I had just learned. For 9 years, I had believed we were invisible to them. Erased, forgotten. But they had been watching the whole time, waiting for my son to become valuable enough to reclaim. The crude website Ethan had built at 13 had evolved into something remarkable. He called it Sensor Map now, a full mobile application that Marcus had helped him develop over the past year. Marcus provided resources, development tools, cloud hosting, user testing frameworks. But the vision was entirely Ethan's. The app allowed users to scan a location and input data about lighting levels, noise intensity, crowd density, exit locations. It aggregated community data, building a database of sensory-friendly spaces across the city. Color-coded ratings showed users what to expect before they walked through a door. Green meant safe. Yellow meant caution. Red meant overwhelming. I visited during a testing session at Marcus's home office. Ethan demonstrated how it worked, more animated than I had ever seen him. Before you walk into a restaurant, he explained, you can see if the music is loud, if the lights are fluorescent, if it gets crowded on Saturday nights. Who adds this information? I asked. Everyone. Users report their experiences. The data gets better over time. Patterns emerge. Marcus pulled me aside afterward. He is brilliant, he said, you know that. But there is something else. What? He does not just want to help people avoid bad environments. He wants to prove that their struggles are real, that sensory overload is not weakness, it is data, measurable, valid. I thought of every doctor who had told me Ethan was overreacting, every teacher who had dismissed his needs as behavioral problems. My son was building scientific proof that he and people like him had been right all along. Dr. Reyes had watched Ethan grow for 9 years. When she saw Sensor Map, she understood immediately what it could mean. This could help so many of my clients, she said. So many families struggling the way you struggled. She asked permission to share it with her professional network, and I agreed. Word traveled through the autism therapy community faster than I expected. 3 therapists in Portland started recommending it to their clients, then a special education coordinator in Salem, then a sensory integration clinic in Eugene. The app spread through whispered recommendations and desperate parent forums. Emails started arriving, not to Marcus, but directly to Ethan. His contact information was on the app, and people wanted him to know what he had built. A mother from Bend wrote that her daughter had attended a birthday party for the first time because she had checked Sensor Map beforehand. No meltdown. She stayed the whole time. A father from Medford said his son had used the app before a job interview, found the quiet room in advance, and gotten the position. An autistic adult from Seattle, 43 years old, wrote something that made me cry. This is the first time something was built for me, not just about me. Ethan read every message without visible reaction, but I noticed his hands were not fidgeting. He was calm, certain. They are not just using it, he said quietly. They are adding to it, making it better. His vision was working. The patterns were multiplying. Marcus had connections in the accessibility tech world. He had been talking about Sensor Map to colleagues for months, and one of those conversations reached someone at Cascade Accessibility Ventures, a small investment firm that specialized in technology serving disabled communities. The managing partner was Diana Cho, known for patient investment strategies and genuine commitment to the field. She reviewed the app, the user data, the growth metrics. Then she requested a meeting. Diana met with Marcus and me at a coffee shop in the Pearl District. Ethan attended via video call because crowds were still difficult for him. She asked technical questions that Ethan answered with precise detail. She asked market questions that Marcus handled smoothly. Then she asked one personal question. Ethan, why did you build this? Because I needed it, he said. And if I needed it, others do too. Diana nodded slowly. We would like to discuss a seed investment. Based on current traction and projected growth, Our preliminary valuation is in the range of $1.2 million. I stopped breathing. $1.2 million? For something my son had built in his bedroom on a laptop I bought with a Christmas bonus. Ethan's expression did not change, but I saw his fingers tap 3 times on his desk. His pattern for processing big information. He was calculating, preparing, understanding exactly what this number meant. The investment closed 3 months later, $250,000 for an equity stake that would fund real development. Ethan hired a part-time developer, improved the interface, expanded the database. SensorMap launched officially on app stores, and the downloads started climbing. 1,000, 5,000, 15,000. Media attention followed, local news features, disability advocacy blogs, a mention in a tech accessibility newsletter that went viral in certain circles. Schools started implementing it formally, not just individual parents but entire district programs. By the time Ethan turned 17, the numbers had exceeded every projection. The revenue model took shape, free for individuals, subscription pricing for institutions. Cascade brought in a co-investor for Series A discussions. The new valuation made my head spin. $3.7 million. I watched the numbers on the investor dashboard Marcus had shared with me, unable to fully comprehend what I was seeing. My son, the boy my family had called too much to handle, had built something worth $3.7 million. I should have felt only joy. But something else gnawed at me. Lily's warning echoed in my mind. If that boy ever amounts to anything, we need to be ready to act. Ethan had amounted to something. I wondered how long before they made their move. 2 weeks after the valuation became public, I came home from work to find a bouquet on my doorstep. Expensive arrangement, white lilies and roses and eucalyptus, professionally wrapped by a high-end florist. My hands trembled as I picked it up. A small card was tucked inside the cellophane. The message was written in elegant script. We have been watching Ethan's success with great pride. Families should celebrate together. Perhaps it is time to reconnect. With love, Mom and Dad. No return address, no phone number, just the implication. We know, we see, we are ready. I stood in the doorway, unable to move. 11 years of silence. 11 years of doing everything alone, fighting every battle without backup, building a life from nothing while they pretended we did not exist. And now that there was money, they were proud. I carried the flowers inside and set them on the counter. I did not throw them away. Evidence, I thought, just like Ethan taught me. That evening, I showed Ethan the card. He read it once, twice, 3 times. His expression did not change. They waited until the valuation was public, he said. How do you know it was public? Tech blogs, investor announcements. I set alerts for my own name 3 years ago. I knew they would see it eventually. I stared at my son. You expected this? He nodded. Patterns. They ignored us when we had nothing. They will return when we have something. Basic human behavior. What do? Ethan looked at me with those steady gray-blue eyes. We wait. We document. And when they make their move, we will be ready. He returned to his computer and pulled up the family archive folder. 11 years of evidence. Waiting. I watched my 17-year-old son prepare for a battle I had hoped would never come, but it was coming. I could feel it in my bones. The family that had thrown us away was circling back, drawn by the scent of money like sharks to blood. They thought Ethan was still that vulnerable 6-year-old they had discarded. They thought I was still that desperate young mother they had abandoned. They had no idea what we had become. I took a photo of the flowers, the card, the message, added it to the folder. The first entry in what I knew would be a new chapter. They were watching us. But we were watching back. And we had 11 years of truth on our side. The phone rang while I was making dinner 3 weeks after the flowers arrived. Ethan's safe foods, same as always, plain pasta and apple slices and exactly 7 goldfish crackers. My cell buzzed on the counter, an unknown number with a 503 area code. I almost ignored it. Telemarketers, probably. Bill collectors. Nothing I wanted to deal with. But something made me answer. Julia? The voice on the other end made my blood freeze. It is Mom. I could not move. The spatula slipped from my hand and clattered against the stove. 11 years. 11 years of silence, of ignored calls and returned letters and lawyers delivering messages instead of parents. And now my mother's voice, soft and trembling, as if nothing had happened. I know we have not spoken in so long. I think about you and Ethan every day. I could not find words. My throat had locked shut. We made mistakes, Julia. Your father and I, we were scared. We did not understand Ethan's condition. But we have learned so much since then. I finally managed to speak. You kicked us out. You told me my son was too much for you. A pause on the other end. Then, in a voice dripping with rehearsed confusion, that is not how I remember it, sweetheart. My blood turned to ice. Not how she remembered it. 11 years of therapy bills and sleepless nights and fighting every battle alone, and my mother was rewriting history like it was a rough draft she could revise. We would love to see you both, she continued, to reconnect, as a family. Behind me, I heard Ethan's door open. He was listening. Of course he was. I will think about it, I said, and I hung up before she could say another word. Ethan stood in the hallway when I turned around. You heard? He nodded. What do you think? His fingers tapped against his thigh, the pattern he used when processing complex information. We should meet them. Absolutely not, I said. They do not deserve to see you after what they did. It is not about what they deserve. It is about information. I stared at him. He continued calmly. They are making a move. We need to understand what kind. A meeting will tell us more than avoiding them. You want to walk into their trap? I want to see what the trap looks like, so we can build a better one. I realized something had shifted between us. For 11 years I had been protecting him. Now he was strategizing for both of us. My 17-year-old autistic son was thinking 3 moves ahead while I was still reacting to the last one. You have been preparing for this, I said. Ethan met my eyes, rare and deliberate. I have been preparing since I was 8. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with fear. It was recognition. My son was not the vulnerable child they remembered. He was something else entirely, and they had no idea what was coming. The restaurant my parents chose was in the Pearl District, a place called Andina, with white tablecloths and soft lighting and prices that made my stomach turn. They insisted on paying, of course. Everything about this meeting was designed to remind me of what they had and what I did not. Ethan and I arrived first, a strategic choice. He wore his noise-canceling headphones around his neck, ready if he needed them. His eyes moved across the room the moment we walked in, cataloging exits and light sources and noise levels. Yellow zone, he murmured. Manageable. I squeezed his hand once. He did not pull away. They arrived together. Richard and Diane Prescott, both in their late 60s now, dressed like they were attending a charity gala. My father's silver hair was perfectly styled, his expensive watch catching the light as he moved. My mother looked softer than I remembered, more fragile, dabbing her eyes with a tissue before she even reached our table. Behind them came Victoria, 44 years old now, dressed like she was attending a board meeting instead of a family dinner. Her husband Bradley was absent. Her children were not mentioned. This was not a reunion. This was business. My mother reached for Ethan first, arms outstretched. Oh, my grandson, look how tall you are. Ethan did not move, did not speak, just observed, cataloging every gesture and expression the way he cataloged everything else. My father shook my hand, not a hug but a handshake, like I was a client he was meeting for the first time. You look well, Julia. Considering everything. Considering everything. I swallowed the response I wanted to give and sat down. The dinner unfolded like a carefully choreographed performance. My mother asked about my job, my apartment, my support system. Every question felt like data collection, information gathering for some purpose I could not yet see. Victoria filled the silences with stories about her children's achievements, private schools and travel teams, and summer programs in Europe. The implication hung in the air like smoke. We have resources you do not. Ethan said nothing throughout the meal. He ate the plain bread that was the only safe food on the menu and watched everyone with those steady gray-blue eyes. After the entrees arrived, my father cleared his throat. That same throat clear from 11 years ago, the one that preceded bad news and worse decisions. Julia, we have been thinking about Ethan's future. I set down my fork. His app, Sensor Map is very impressive indeed. But that kind of money needs proper management. He has management, I said. He has a mentor and an investment team. My father waved his hand dismissively. Outsiders, strangers. What Ethan needs is family looking out for his interests. Victoria leaned forward. We would like to establish a